and future.
Go ahead.
Once again, let me welcome everyone, present and future listeners, to this most important topic, which I entitled A Jewish View of Life. I guess if I wanted to be cute, I would have called it A Womb with a View, meaning what exactly does the Torah, the Jewish Bible, have to say about life before we emerge? What is the process by which we are formed and created and eventually reach the stage of childbirth? So it's axiomatic that God is the giver of life, both at the beginning of our lives, beginning of the world, and also in terms of resurrection. At the end of times, God is going to resurrect the righteous also. So he's the giver of life at the very beginning as well. So if you look at the source sheet, if you could put it up. If not, I'll just read it.
Certainly.
I quote first from Genesis, obviously from the first chapter. Vayivra Elokim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara oto, zachar u'nekeva bara otam. God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Of course, by the way, the last phrase, male and female, he created him, resolves one of the big controversies in American life today that is traversing the globe as well. Male and female, he created them, meaning there are two sexes, two genders, male and female, and that's God's intention. But more to our point, God created man in his image. What exactly is the image of God? So here we have the great commentators in Jewish life note that in our form, in our image, means lahavinu lahaskil, to understand, to think. What we call the tselem Elokim, the image of God, is really our uniqueness. It's our soul, it's our intellect, it's the personality. It's what raises us above the animals. So we believe, we affirm that the fetus is potential life. So therefore, abortion is an option only in the weightiest and rarest of circumstances, when the mother's life, meaning actual life, is going to be challenged and threatened, then actual life is going to take precedence over potential life. But nonetheless, the potential life of man, meaning when we are an embryo, that has tremendous significance, especially spiritual significance. And of course, the essence of our lives comes from God. That's in the second chapter of Genesis. Vayitzer Hashem Elokim et ha'adam afar min ha'adamah. God formed man from the dust of the ground. And God blew in his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living being. Our lives, of course, are dependent on God. Without God's presence, without God breathing into us the breath of life, without the image of God that's within us, simply we do not exist. It's God's will that he created mankind in his image as a thinking, speaking, living being, nefesh chaya, a living being, distinguished and really not at all comparable to the animals, a unique creature. What then is the womb? Because of course, when God created man, Adam, the first man, he wasn't emerging from a womb. He was created whole. He was created in adult form. What then do we mean? What then is the status of an embryo? So that's in source 3, and that's in the Talmud, in the tractate Sanhedrin. It quotes the verse in Genesis 9, Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam, damo yishafech. One who sheds the blood of a person, ha'adam ba'adam. It literally means a person in a person, his blood shall be shed. What does it mean? A person that is in a person? You must say, this is a fetus that is in its mother's womb. Meaning, the verse didn't simply say, whoever sheds the blood of a person, his blood shall be shed, but it emphasized, whoever sheds the blood of a person within a person. Well, the only person that we know that's within a person is going to be the fetus in the mother's womb. So I'm not addressing directly the complexities of abortion law in Jewish thought and practice. I already stated briefly that it's a rarity, it's an exception, and it's when the mother's life is going to be somehow threatened. But nonetheless, you see the significance to which the sages attributed the life of the fetus, a person within a person. We understand already the substance and the import of the life of the fetus. So how then do we view this potential life, this developing life? What in fact is the view of the fetus in the womb? Well, the first we have to ask, try to understand, and I grant you that much of this is mystical. It's not necessarily provable in a laboratory for sure, but nonetheless, the Bible tells us that human beings are unique because of Tzelem Elokim, because of this image of God and the soul. So what exactly, or how exactly do you understand the entry of the soul, the implantation of the soul in the human being? And this, and many other similar questions about the development of a fetus is addressed by the Talmudic sages. So for example, in that same tractate of Sanhedrin, 91b, the Talmud brings a dialogue that took place between one of the greatest of our Talmudic sages, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, who in fact was the leader of Israel in the 2nd century of the Common Era, and one of his good friends was the Roman Emperor Antoninus, one of the Anthonies. We're not sure which one, but one of the Anthonies. Antoninus said to Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, from when is the soul placed in a person? Is it from the moment of conception or from the moment of the formation of the embryo, which is 40 days after conception? Meaning the sages understood, and this really is verifiable, that for the first 40 days, really the first 6 weeks or so after conception, there really is no physical form of any identifiable measure to the fetus. So Antoninus asked, when does the soul enter a person? From conception or from the formation of the embryo, which is roughly 40 days after conception? And Rabbi Yehuda the Prince said to him, it's from the moment of the formation of the embryo, meaning the soul enters the fetus 40 days after conception. This was challenged by Antoninus, who said to Rabbi Yehuda, that is inconceivable. Is it possible that a piece of meat could stand for 3 days without salt as a preservative and would not rot? The embryo could not exist for 40 days without a soul, meaning a human being requires a soul. Rather, the soul is placed in man from the moment of conception. That is to say, we can't even conceive of even a fetus, anything that is potential life, anything that aspires to human life, without it containing at the same time this image of God. Meaning the image of God is not something that pertains to the human being after birth. The image of God already inheres in the human being at some point in fetal development. And the argument is, what is that point? Rabbi Yehuda first said, it's from the moment the embryo begins to form. Antoninus challenged him quite cogently that it has to be from the moment of conception. And indeed, Rabbi Yehuda then conceded the point. Antoninus taught me this matter. And there is a verse that supports him, as it is stated in the book of Job, and your providence, Pikudecha, has preserved my spirit. That is to say, there cannot be any form of human life in which there is not a soul. What in fact is a dispute between Antoninus, the Roman emperor, and Rabbi Yehuda the prince. It's whether the soul has integrity or has existence independent from the body, or does the soul have meaning only in the context of the body? So that Rabbi Yehuda the prince maintained that the soul can only have meaning in the context of a body, even a fetus, whereas Antoninus disagreed, and he said that the soul has existence even independent of the body, but the body cannot exist. A human body, even in fetal form, cannot exist, cannot survive unless it already possesses a soul. A body does not mean a born human being. A body means even an embryo. So we see that the sages understood that the soul inheres in the body at a very early stage, or at least it relates to the body at a very early stage. What then is the process of development? And here we have another Talmudic passage from the Tractate of Nida, 30b, number 5 in the sheet that's in front of you. Rabbi Simlai taught, to what is a fetus in its mother's womb comparable? To a folded notebook. And it rests with its hands on two sides of its head at the temples, its arms on its two knees, its heels on its two buttocks, and its head rests between its knees. Its mouth is closed, and its umbilicus is open. That's, of course, how the fetus is fed. It eats from what the mother eats, and drinks from what the mother drinks, and does not excrete lest it kill its mother. We should just pause for a moment and try to understand the miraculous nature of birth. And it truly is a miracle. Granted, we see it now as part of the natural process, but to think that a seed and an egg can come together and be joined with a soul and produce a living human being is wonder of wonders. And we should always stand in awe and gratitude of the Lord that he enables us to produce such offspring in such a way. And we all know, God forbid, how many things can go wrong in fetal development and how fragile the fetus is. And yet, the existence and survival and development of the fetus is quite remarkable. When Rabbi Simlai speaks of the fetus as a folded notebook, well, now we understand how the Talmudic sages referred to what was a process of development, because something which is folded then unfolds over time. So it begins as a small entity and then begins to unfold, to unwind, to develop, to spread, and then finally reach a form where it is capable of existence outside the womb. And then he says something that's also remarkable. Once it emerges into the airspace of the world, the closed limb, that is to say, its mouth opens, and the open limb, its umbilicus, closes, as otherwise it cannot live for even an hour. Once birth comes, there's this immediate transformation in the existence of the fetus, from potential life to actual life. What would have, God forbid, killed it before, an open mouth, which would have absorbed and swallowed amniotic fluid, so it's closed when it's in the womb, now opens. And the umbilicus then is closed, even cut off. And now listen to this, the end of the Talmudic passage. While in the womb, a candle is lit for it above its head, and it gazes from one end of the world to the other. And there are no days when a person is in a more blissful state than those days when he is a fetus in his mother's womb. That, in fact, is a cliche that we find in American culture as well. how nurturing the womb is, how a child, sometimes even an adult, yearns to return to the security of the mother's womb. But the candle lit above its head is not, of course, referring to the mother smoking. And here we're talking metaphorically. What is the candle and what is the bliss? So in fact, in number 6, the Maharal, who's one of the great geniuses of Jewish life, just parenthetically, the Maharal Judah Loewy, famous as the Rabbi of Prague, 1520 to 1609, is a prolific writer and a brilliant thinker and a genius in so many different spheres. In addition to being a Talmudic scholar and a decisive of Jewish law and a philosopher, he was also the Rabbi of Prague and of Posen and of several other cities. All right, truth be told, his rabbinic career was not always a happy one, and I think any pastor could appreciate this. He was removed from the job in Prague and became a rabbi in Posen, and then removed from Posen. They really exchanged rabbis, and then he came back to Prague because the Jews of Prague decided they were better off with him than with his replacement. So they were traded and then traded back for each other. What went wrong in Prague? Well, it's a famous story. He began to sermonize on topics that hit too close to home, some of the sins of the community, and the congregants did not want to hear it, and so they dispatched him to another city. This great thinker, great genius, reminds me of the famous story of the itinerant preacher who came to a certain town whose inhabitants were known to be chicken thieves. They stole chickens from each other and from the surrounding villages. And the preacher comes and he starts to discourse on the evils of thievery, of stealing, and they loved his speech. And they welcomed him back the next year. Comes back the next year and he starts speaking about the evils of stealing chickens. And they ran him out of town. And on his way out, he said to them, the preacher, I don't understand. Last year you liked my sermon. This year you didn't. So he said, yeah, last year you spoke about stealing. This year you spoke about stealing chickens. That's the difference between preaching and meddling. Last year you were preaching, now you're meddling. And so the Maharal, in fact, was accused of meddling too much, and they got rid of him. But in any event, he explains the Talmudic passage that a candle is lit above the head of the fetus in number 6. The candle is the neshama, the soul, which is given to man, but not yet implanted in the body. Meaning the fetus, the soul hovers around, but it doesn't yet inherit a body that's not yet fully alive and functioning as it would be once it emerges from the womb. And it is a blissful state because we are free from any spiritual counterforce. And we're also not yet completely bound to the material world, meaning the soul is present, not yet in the body. Understand that we're talking about something which is non-physical, the soul, so we use euphemisms to try to understand somehow what it is, but eventually the soul resides in the body, certainly from the moment of birth, if not before, and the soul departs the body when a person sheds his or her mortal coil. But it's not only the physical development that the sages of the Talmud focused on, but it's the spiritual development. And this we find in the continuation of the passage in the Talmudic tractate of Nida, 30b. A fetus does not leave the womb until the angels administer an oath to it, as it is stated, to me every knee shall bow, every tongue shall swear, the verse from Isaiah. Every tongue shall swear, this is referring to the day of one's birth, as it is stated in the description of a righteous person, the verse from Psalms 24. He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not taken my name in vain and has not sworn deceitfully, that is, he has kept the oath that he took before he was born. And what is the oath that the angels administer to the fetus? This is the oath. be righteous and do not be wicked. And even if the entire world says to you, you are righteous, consider yourself wicked and know that the Holy One, blessed be He, is pure and His ministers are pure and the soul that He gave you is pure. If you preserve it in a state of purity, all is well. But if you do not keep it pure, I, the angel, shall take it from you. And this, in fact, presages a blessing that Jews recite every morning as part of the prayers. God, the soul that you gave me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you implanted it within me, you gave it to me pure, and my obligation is to restore to you pure as well. The womb is a blissful state, as the Talmud said. Every need that we have is cared for. Life is good. It's as if the fetus endures this trauma when it has to leave that blissful state and enter the world of the living. And it is a trauma. It's not only the physical travail of the mother who's giving birth, but in fact is the trauma of the fetus that's leaving this idyllic state and entering a world that will have challenges, a new and to that child unknown world, a world that will have this counterforce. I digress for a moment. I always think about this when babies are born in spring. I myself was born in April, and born in spring, life is great. It's getting warm, trees, flowers, and then the summer comes and everything is great. You're walking, you're crawling around and enjoying the outdoors. And then all of a sudden, 6 months into your life, October, November, at least in the Northeast where I grew up, it starts getting cold. And then it gets even colder and you can't go outside and the snow comes down and you can't maneuver at all. You're all wrapped up. Life was so good for half a year when you're born in the spring, and then it gets cold. Well, life was wonderful in the womb for 9 months. And then we emerge from the womb and we confront the world. And as the Maharal continues in source 8, when we enter the world and become material beings, then the Yetzer Hara, man's instinctual drive, is activated. The Yetzer Hara, what we call the evil inclination, is not evil in terms of good and evil, but it means the pursuit of our instinctual needs, of gratification, the physical needs that will confront and challenge us throughout our lives, and that will trump anything else in our lives unless we exercise some self-control. Meaning, all right, all babies are cute, but there is no more narcissistic creature than the infant who is born and then has needs, wants milk when he wants it, wants to cry when she wants to, wants to have a diaper change whenever he or she wants. We outgrow that narcissism at some point. I should say many, I hope most people do, but certainly not everyone. Those instinctual drives that we have precede anything else in life. And another great sage at the turn of the last century, the 19th into the 20th century, Rav Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, said that the fetus in the mother's womb is construed as completely righteous, for it contains a pure soul since conception. The evil inclination does not enter it until later, when it leaves the mother's womb. And that's part of the blissful state. It's not just the comfort and security in a physical sense, the nurturing cocoon in which we develop, but it's also in terms of our future lives on earth as we're living and breathing and walking and interacting and doing and accomplishing and striving. In the womb, we do not have this counterforce. It's a completely pure state. Only when we exit the womb and enter the world, then we encounter this counterforce, our instinctual desire. The Talmud continues about life in the womb. Number 10, Nida 31a. The sages taught there are three partners in the creation of a person. The Holy One, blessed be He, God, and His father and His mother. What do each of the partners contribute? So the Talmud explains, his father emits the white seed from which the following body parts are formed: the bones, the sinews, the nails, the brain that's in its head, and the white of the eye. His mother emits red seed, from which are formed the skin, the flesh, the hair, and the black of the eye. And God, the Holy One, blessed be He, inserts into him a spirit, a soul, his countenance, eyesight, hearing of the ear, capability of speech of the mouth, capability of walking with the legs, understanding and wisdom. And when a person's time to depart from the world arrives, the Holy One, blessed be He, retrieves his part, and he leaves the part of the person's father and mother before them. That is the process of creation of the human being. There are three partners. The Maharal continues in his commentary in number 11. The father provides 5 things, the mother provides 5 things, and God 10. The father provides the form, surah, the mother provides the substance, chomer, and God provides 10 spiritual entities that are connected to the soul. You have form, you have matter, and you have the soul. In another Talmudic passage, the sages said that the fetus traverses 3 different chambers on its way to birth: the lower chamber, the middle chamber, and the upper chamber. The lower chamber is the form. The middle chamber is the substance. And then the crown, of course, the human being, is the soul. That's the upper chamber. And once attaining the upper chamber, then the fetus is ready to be born. So we see, in fact, that the fetus has a very rich spiritual life. It's not just about physical development. It's not just about survival. It's about, as the sages understood it, preparation for life. And not preparation that will know how to swallow and eat and talk, preparation that will know how to encounter God's word, understand it, and implement it in our lives. And 2 other things happen that the sages pointed out. One is actually very, very significant. Number 12, the Talmud says in various parts of the Talmud, this is Sota 2a, Rav says, 40 days before the embryo is formed, meaning at conception, a divine voice issues forth and says, the daughter of so-and-so is destined to marry so-and-so. Meaning already at conception, it's decreed for us who we're going to find to be our spouses. Because marriage is also this type of sacrament, because it contains within it the capacity to bring new life into existence. What is going to bring new life into existence also has to bear the divine imprint. I'll just note parenthetically, so I put in brackets the word marry, because that's how it's understood, that the daughter of so-and-so will marry so-and-so, but in fact, that word is left out. And I heard from a very modern sage, it explains why some people never marry, or in fact, why some marriages unfortunately don't work out. All it says is that the daughter of so-and-so is destined to so-and-so, meaning they're going to meet. That's the guarantee. They're going to meet each other. What they do after that is their own free choice. How they conduct themselves in their marriage, that's their own free will. But that they're destined to meet is a given, a guarantee. And if they take advantage of the opportunity and pursue that courtship, then that is ratified from heaven. And in fact, what's ratified in heaven is what pre-existed their arrival on this earth. And finally, the Talmud says in the tractate of Brachot 50a, Minayin shafilu ubarin shebemei iman amru shira al hayam. So Passover is coming soon, and with it we celebrate the splitting of the Red Sea and the salvation of the Jewish people. The Talmud asks, whence is it derived that even fetuses in their mother's womb recited the song at the Red Sea? Even fetuses can praise God. As it is stated in the chapter of Psalms, in assemblies, bless God the Lord from the source of Israel. Fetuses are included in these assemblies, meaning the fetus is probably better positioned than even we are to sing God's praises, because from the womb, the fetus has an unobstructed view of God's greatness. We affirm that the fetus has an awareness, a consciousness that is not easy to quantify, but it transcends the intellect and does not use the mode of intellect, the brain, in order to attain this type of awareness. It does not use the tools of understanding that we have. We can't recreate that state once we're born. All we can do is strive for purity, but know that when we are in the womb, we are being prepared for life. And the Talmud, in fact, says it's not only the daughter of so-and-so will meet so-and-so, but it's also he will be able to acquire this field and he'll go to this profession. And that's why we say, and we believe that the soul that God gives us in the womb is pure. It'll eventually be taken from us, and we strive that when it is taken from us, it's returned in as pure a state as possible. All right, God doesn't expect perfection. Thank God for that, but he does expect effort. And we are rewarded, in fact, for that effort, knowing that we can't be perfect, but nonetheless, the effort must be there to live in accordance with the will of God. We shouldn't think ever that the fetus is just a clump of cells. It's much more than that. It's a potential human being that already is wrestling with its soul and with God's demands upon us and the prerequisites for life in God's world, in which that soul, meaning all of us, is charged with making that world a much better and more perfected place. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Pruzansky, and thank you everyone for joining. Really, thank you for that incredible insight into the Jewish tradition's view of the fetus. And really, thank you everyone for all of your efforts on behalf of the unborn, both in America and in Israel. And have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay.